It's time for the athletic sport. I get to speak with people in the athletic and sports world. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Athletic Sport. I am your host Casey Bell, and today's athletic guest is Marvin Williams. Let's get the show started. If you can, what was it when you first started playing basketball? What was it about basketball that made you say, out of all the sports that exist, this is the one that's for me?
It's a good question. I really liked it because of the sport you can play by yourself. You didn't need a whole bunch of people to be with you. You can go. I can dribble, and I can work on my game by myself. I didn't need no help, and so I think the isolation part of it for me was probably the key. So like when I got frustrated with my mom and dad and the things that was going on in the house, I just go grab my basketball and go down to the park and stay down there till dark, just shooting and thinking. So I really like the isolation part of basketball.
And from your experience, what tips can you give people who about basketball, the game itself? Because you said you were a coach, and so as a coach, what is two things you can say people really need to understand? Because sometimes people get in sports and team sports, they get a little hot-headed and they forget that it's a team sport. So what are two things you can give people, things they really need to remember when you're playing a team game?
Well, I think people need to remember basketball is a game of life, if I could put it in that phrase. Because if you think about it for a second, you on a court with people from different backgrounds, sometimes maybe different nationalities, but y'all all got one common goal in mind, and that's to win. So use basketball if you're gonna be involved in basketball as a way of life and looking at life. So when you go out in the real world, you're gonna meet people that are not like you or don't look like you, but you got to work with those people for one common goal, and that's to succeed. And so basketball can be a great tool to teach your kid about working together with other races, nationalities, and people that don't, that are just totally different from you, and you find the one common way of achieving your goal.
I like
And I
that.
think, yeah, I think the second thing with basketball, there's so many. I think our kids get so caught up in wanting to be an NBA player, they don't understand the true process of what goes on. I think everybody they want our kids nowadays want the short term fix. Basketball is to be a good basketball player or just to be a good author, be a good TV show producer. You got to be willing to put work in. It's not gonna come. It's not gonna come just because you want it. You got to put those hours in and learn to understand your craft and be good at your craft in order for that to happen.
So you being having experience yourself in basketball and your son,
Mm-hmm.
what are some things people may not know? Because the main thing people know about basketball is you play well in high school, you get a scholarship, you play well in
Mm-hmm.
college, and then NBA picks you up. But that's not the road for everybody in basketball. So
Correct. Correct.
what are other ways to get into basketball other than high school and college? And are there other opportunities of basketball, not including it, that's not a part of the NBA, but are still just as good?
Yeah, I think one of the things I talk about in my book I learned, which wasn't one of my plans, but God worked it out, is coaching. I mean, there's so many avenues. When I was trying out, all I cared about, I want to make to the NBA. I want to make to the NBA, take care of my family. And then when that didn't work, I didn't have a backup plan. But lucky for me, I had a girlfriend who understood what I was going through, and she helped me with a backup plan. I never envisioned being a coach, more or less a girl's coach. And so that coaching opened a lot of different doors for me too. I got to meet a lot of people. I got to do some positive things with some kids. Then I also got to use that skill to teach my own son. I think basketball can have so many opportunities with them. Even if you don't make it to the NBA and you love basketball, there's always jobs, coaching jobs. You can be a teacher, be a PE teacher, and teach basketball. You can start your own business as a basketball instructor. You can connect with the NBA. They got so many job opportunities that people who love basketball can still work for the NBA and still be involved in basketball. So it's an avenue. Basketball can take you down a lot of avenues besides just being to the NBA. And I think the NBA is people like my son always says. He said if people knew the truth of what you had to do to be here, a lot of them wouldn't do it. Of course, a lot of work. It's a lot of work. Now, you know,
Yes.
you get in the NBA, you on your own. It's not like college where you got coaches waking you up, make sure you get the way you're supposed to be at.
Right.
In the NBA, you don't do what you're supposed to do, get your therapy, take care of your body. When it comes game time, you're not ready, they leaving you. They'll leave you home. So
Right. So being that I would say artists and athletes had something in common. They work at two places. The first place is usually home or a studio or a workout place where they train and et cetera, et cetera. And then their second place of work is out and about in a studio in, arena, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But in March of 2020, everyone kind of had to fall back in their skills that they've been working on for so long. They now have to not use them anymore and find a new way of living. And so when the pandemic happened to you, what exactly were you going through and what did you do to change your way of living?
well, that's another good question. You know, my son, we all live very conservatively anyway. So we never live with the 5, 6 cars in the yard and the $2 million houses. We've always kind of lived conservatively. I was in Milwaukee actually going to buy a place to stay because my son had got traded from Charlotte to Milwaukee. And so I went to Milwaukee to find a place to stay when the pandemic hit. So I stayed in Milwaukee about 3 or 4 days until we thought it didn't make no more sense to stay there. So came back to Charlotte. And I just basically stayed in the house and tried to stay out of the way and be safe. My son, he did the same thing, but he stayed in Milwaukee. But you know, he had his food delivered to him. The team made sure that he had his food delivered and everything until he stayed there trying to wait to see when they would open up the arena so they could practice. And that went on for about a month and a half. And then they finally realized, well, they're gonna cancel the season. So then he came back home to Charlotte and he basically stayed in the house as well. You know.
So are you still coaching?
No, I stopped coaching.
No? Okay.
I
So
stopped coaching. Yeah.
I guess
I
the
did.
pandemic didn't really affect you as far as being out on the court?
No, it didn't. But it did kind of because there were some kids that even though I wasn't coaching per se my AAU team I had anymore, I had kids who would call me who played ball in college that I coached. They would come home and say, "Hey, coach, can you get me a gym and work me out?" And so that affected a whole lot. I couldn't get the guys in the gym no more. So yeah, that kind of slowed me down for my little side deal I was doing.
So what can you, as far as basketball, if there's anything about basketball that when you think of it, it's something that's going to be in your life forever. Even when you're 100 years old, you could see yourself on the court.
Yeah.
What is what is that one thing?
I think for me, basketball, the passion of basketball is gonna stay in my life because it brought me so much joy, spiritual joy. Then it brought me a great lifestyle. Then it gave me an opportunity to travel. Like one of the things we did with basketball with my son was I traveled to China. Whenever they went over to China to play, I got a chance to go over to China and play. And then I got to see Yao Ming and all those guys who are ambassadors of China as well. So I'm gonna always love basketball. I'm always love it. It's always gonna be a big part of my life because it created my life. It created my life for me.
Cool. Now, my last question for you, this might be a difficult question for you to answer. I usually ask this to everyone, but not everyone has been in your shoes. And you've already mentioned you've already met so many people in the basketball arena.
Wow.
But if there is someone you haven't met, whether they're dead or alive in the basketball arena, and you could either play a game with them or you can just sit down and have a conversation with them about their past journey in basketball, who would this person be and why?
Magic Johnson. I've always loved Magic Johnson, even when he was in high school. He has such an upbeat, positive personality. I think just meeting him as a person and being around him as a person and his energy that he brings every time you see him, he's smiling, and he's become a black business leader. So I think if there was one athlete, I probably really, if I had on my bucket list, probably be Magic Johnson.
That is all the time we have for you today on The Athletic Sport. I'd like to thank our guest, Marvin Williams, for bouncing on by, and of course you, the audience, for viewing. Have yourself a great day. Have a great week.